Living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
When I say fast food, what comes to mind? A greasy hamburger, salty French fries, maybe some ready-made tacos? There's no arguing, fast food is convenient and cheap, but what is the real cost of fast food when it comes to your health? I'm your host, Janet Whitmoyer. Welcome to Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. Welcome back. This morning we offer some food for thought when it comes to hitting a fast food drive-thru. Yes, it's convenient, but what it does to our bodies isn't at all convenient for any of us. Joining us is Dr. Sharon Hecker, a cardiologist from Rocky Mountain Heart and Lung in Kalispell. Thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Good. Let's start off with the real big picture. So can you tell us what's so bad about fast food?
Well, fast food's pretty much everything. They're high in calories, they're high in sodium, they don't bring a lot of nutrients with them to your body, and they make people fat.
Okay. So let's try to break that down a little bit. One of the things you talked about was that they're high in carbohydrates. Can you explain to us why carbohydrates are so bad, and specifically fast food carbohydrates?
Right. Well, one of the problems with carbohydrates is that simple carbohydrates when we eat them, they go into our bloodstream very quickly. So our blood sugars spike. That spike in blood sugar triggers a release of insulin to help the sugar get into the cells and to kind of control this like overwhelming flood of sugar that gets into the system. Once that outpouring of insulin comes along, then your blood sugar plummets. So people will feel a quick burst of energy and then later on feel hungry again, not satisfied.
Okay, so can you give us some recommendation when it comes to carbohydrates? Are all of them bad, or are there some that are actually good for us?
Oh no, we need carbohydrates. In fact, most of our calories should come from carbohydrates. But a better carbohydrate would be a complex carbohydrate. Those would be the kinds of carbohydrates you find in vegetables, fruits, nuts, whole grains, beans. Complex carbohydrates are longer chain carbon molecules, and they take longer for our bodies to break down. They stay in our stomach longer, so we feel full longer. And because of that length of time that it takes for our body to process them, we don't get the same spikes in blood sugar that you see with simple carbohydrates.
Okay. Another component that you talked about was sodium or salt.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what the danger is with salt? How much really should we have, and why is the fast food a problem with sodium?
Well, let me just explain a little bit about what happens with the fast food and pretty much any prepared or processed foods that you eat. The sodium there is not really added the way we think of a salt shaker. It comes in the form of preservatives, flavor enhancers, things like that. It's very complex, and huge amounts of sodium can be hidden in food that you might not even think of as salty. For example, bread can be very high in sodium. And salt is great or sodium is great as a flavor enhancer, but it doesn't have great effects on the body after a certain amount. We need salt to live. I usually tell people to focus on what comes out of the salt shaker. That's the stuff that really makes your food taste good, and you can use quite a bit of salt out of your salt shaker before getting to that teaspoon maximum each day. On the other hand, a single fast food meal will put you over the teaspoon very quickly.
And so if you were to eat that and actually have too much sodium, what effect would that have on your body?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you won't feel good. The salt load or the sodium load brings a lot of the fluid in your body already into your intestinal tract, and that'll make you feel a little bit queasy. Okay. But second of all, that sodium also helps you retain fluid and raises your blood pressure. So you might end up with hypertension or some of the bad side effects of chronic high blood pressure.
Okay, so following on that a little bit, there are certain people who really do need to restrict their sodium. What kinds of conditions or what kind of people should really be more careful than others with their sodium intake?
Yeah. Well, we know that people with high blood pressure can lower their blood pressure just by watching their sodium intake. Yeah. Again, about 2,000 milligrams a day is what we recommend. A similar condition would be congestive heart failure, where people tend to retain fluid. They might want to make sure they're not eating too much salt as well. One of the things we found is that certain dietary interventions, like cutting back on the salt in your diet, are as effective as some of our medications in treating high blood pressure.
Okay, great. Another thing in fast foods that seems to be an issue, or that we've heard a lot about, is oils and fats. There's been a lot of information on saturated oils and fats. Can you kind of clarify for us, are these oils bad for us, or are there good oils or fats as well?
Yeah, so the whole fast food product is really engineered to make us feel good. Like we taste it, it's easy to digest, it's easy to chew, it slides down very easily. There's nothing difficult about it, even taste-wise. And some of that has to do with the combination of salt, fat, and sugar that are put into the fast foods. The fats that are often used are what we call hydrogenated fats. So those are vegetable oils that would be ordinarily liquid at room temperature, but because of the deep frying, for example, these get altered and become partially hydrogenated. And those are the most unhealthy types of fats. The healthiest fat of all are fats that we would find in olive oil or some of the vegetable oils. These are the monounsaturated fatty acids. They're very good for us, and they actually help promote health by shunting fats away from the atherosclerotic or hardening of the arteries pathway to a healthier pathway, bringing us to better arterial and neurologic health.
Okay. You've given us some really good information on fats, sodium, and other harmful parts of fast foods. And so I want to thank you for this information. Coming up next, you've probably noticed that more and more fast food restaurants are trying to offer healthier choices. But just how healthy are they? We'll look at the menus of several popular fast food restaurants and whether there are healthy options to be found out there. So don't go away. Welcome back. Slowly but surely, some fast food restaurants are adding healthier choices. And if you're selective about what you eat, you can still drive through without going overboard. Dietitian Tyler Setlock from Chaudere here in Helena joins us now with some food for thought when it comes to fast food menus. Welcome, Tyler.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We talked first with Dr. Hecker a few minutes ago about all that was bad with fast foods. So I'm going to ask you, is there any good?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So a lot of fast food restaurants are trying to improve what they're offering. Okay. They're trying to offer healthier options. But largely, the goal of this talk we're going to have today is about educating yourself on what is and what isn't healthy. Okay. In effect, we're trying to encourage ourselves to be stewards of our health. We want to look out for what's right and maybe what's not so right.
Okay. So for those of us who try to maybe avoid going through the fast food line on a daily basis, but every now and then we get that craving and we go through the fast food drive-through, can you give us any tips for actually how we can make a healthier choice?
Yeah, so some are pretty obvious.
Okay.
The first and foremost, I'd say do your best to avoid the fried foods. Those are your foods that are very calorie dense.
Okay.
They have a lot of calories just by virtue of them being deep fried.
Okay.
Obviously, a good choice is to choose, as best you can, healthier restaurants.
Okay.
Ones that you recognize as offering healthier foods. As best you can, trying to include more fruits and vegetables. Oftentimes, your fast food restaurants are kind of devoid of these kind of nourishing, healthy foods, but as best you can, trying to get those in. And a very key tip is try to avoid supersizing as best you can.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, maybe we can go through some of the more popular items that we would find in most of our towns and our fast food restaurants. Starting off with McDonald's. They have the Big Mac. I'm seeing that the Big Mac has 950 milligrams of sodium, 46 grams of total carbs, and 28 grams of fat. That's a lot. So what could we order instead of that Big Mac if we wanted to go to McDonald's?
Right, so what you note right away is the sodium. I believe you said 900.
Yep, 950 whopping milligrams.
So a lot of sodium in those burgers. And just recognize that in fast food, sodium is a very, very common flavor enhancer. It makes food taste very good explicitly, and so it's not uncommon to see a lot of high sodium items on the menu, especially burgers. What you might try instead is something just kind of downsizing literally the burger size, maybe trying a McDouble, for example. You're getting a little bit less. One thing I forgot to mention earlier was portion size. Moderation in portion size. So oftentimes, the item you originally mentioned is oftentimes a bit more than we typically would need. So trying to downsize a little bit. What you might try alternatively altogether is try to focus on leaner, healthier meats. So a better choice might be an artisan grilled chicken sandwich, or just something that has leaner meats altogether, any kind of chicken sandwich. If you want to be really good about it, you might try to aim for a salad, have some fruit sides, which they do offer as well.
Sticking with the hamburger side, if you were to go to Burger King, we know that their signature hamburger is the Whopper. And I'm looking 650 calories, 37 grams of fat, and 910, another big amount of sodium, and 50 grams of carbs. So should we be avoiding the Whopper?
In short, I might say yes.
So instead of the Whopper, what would you suggest there?
Well, so one thing about names like Whopper and Baconator and McDouble, for example, they all sort of are names that hint at the size. They sort of hint that bigger is better. And really, in this case, when we're talking about health, bigger isn't always better. So again, I would say trying to downsize a little bit, having just a regular burger, or again, choosing lean meats like a chicken sandwich or a salad. And if you get a salad, one thing to keep in mind is you want to be wary of how much topping you're adding on, how much salad dressing. You want to avoid drowning your salad in dressing.
All right, so I want to go to one of my favorites. At Wendy's, they offer a baked potato, and to me, that sounds like a good alternative. Is it really a good alternative to a hamburger, or is there something even better that I could choose there?
Well, compared to some things, it could be a good choice. But of course, it's hard for us just to have a baked potato alone. We want to add toppings on top. And so one thing to be wary of is how much you're adding. If you're adding lots of bacon and sour cream and cheese, quickly a potato might not be such a healthy choice. What I might recommend instead is have your baked potato, get some healthy toppings in moderation again. Maybe try to add on another healthy side, so maybe having a salad with some chicken for your main entree and having a potato on the side. And in doing so, we kind of build a healthier meal, a more balanced meal, and avoid making an unhealthy choice.
And one more. Say we want to take a run south of the border and go to Taco Bell for tacos. Can you tell us if tacos are a good choice, or if there's something else that we could choose from that type of cuisine?
So in general, one thing I forgot to mention also was trying to keep it simple. That's a really key phrase you want to keep in your mind as you're going through these fast food restaurants, keeping it simple. So in this case, we're kind of focused on lean meats, so choosing a chicken taco as opposed to a beef taco would be a healthy choice, limiting excess toppings like cheese and sour cream, and just trying to keep your meal to an appropriate portion size.
And one more real quickly, I've only got about 30 seconds left. Can you tell us about pizza? That's everybody's all-time favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. So with pizza, one important thing to keep in mind is try to aim for a thin crust pizza. Recognizing that we get a lot of carbs from the crust, we don't always need that. And frankly, a lot of times our thin crust is just as enjoyable as a thick crust.
Perfect. Thanks for the great information. We need to take a break, but when we come back, what's the healthiest alternative to fast food? The grocery store? We have some simple meal planning tips that are quick and easy and less expensive than fast food. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more with Tyler. Thanks for staying with us. There are many reasons why people eat at fast food restaurants, but there are almost always healthier alternatives that can be just as easy, convenient, and inexpensive. We're still talking with Tyler. Tyler, thanks for sticking around and answering more questions.
Of course.
One of the big reasons people eat at fast foods or restaurants is because they are cheap. Is eating fast food really less expensive than going to the grocery store?
It may seem that way based on the price that you pay when you're having fast food, but ultimately, when you break it out into each serving size, when you're buying food at the grocery store, it's always going to be cheaper.
Oh, that's a really good way of thinking of that. Do you have any tips for eating at home and from the grocery store?
Yeah, so a couple things to keep in mind when you're buying foods from the store and you're trying to work on a budget. There's 3 tips I like to keep in mind. The first of which is buy your food staples in quantity. We'll talk more about staples as well.
Okay.
Trying to buy foods in season. Now, if you're not familiar with what foods are in season at certain times, it's something just to begin to familiarize yourself with. It's a nice thing to know.
Okay.
But in season foods are always cheaper. And you might also look to work with sales. Okay. Oftentimes the food's on sale is always going to be cheaper as well.
Perfect. Okay, do you have any examples of some of your fast food staples that you think might be helpful for people to buy at the grocery store?
Absolutely. So some foods that you might consider adding to your pantry would be, of course, soups, canned products. In this case, I have some oatmeal as well. Oftentimes a cheap option you can have on hand.
Okay.
I also have canned beans. Canned products are always great. There's no reason not to have a couple in your pantry. Okay. You might also consider buying things like meat, of course lean meats because they're the healthiest, chicken, turkey, fish, all those things. But if you want to also cut your budget down, what you might consider is maybe trying to focus on some proteins that are plant-based. So in this case I have lentils here. Lentils are really high protein and also very cheap, so it can work really well on a budget. Of course, rice can be made easily in bulk and go a long way. And of course, more beans and that kind of stuff.
Perfect, that's great examples. Can you give us some examples of what we might call grab-and-go foods that you can take from home rather than having to go to the fast food drive-thru?
Absolutely. So keeping in mind that we live a rushed lifestyle, we're often very busy, we need something on the go to meet our lifestyle needs. But recognize that fast foods aren't the only place offering foods that are fast. You can go to grocery stores, they have grab-and-goes, like you just mentioned. Again, doing your best to keep it simple. Fruits, vegetables, healthy proteins, things that are easily identifiable.
Okay. There are people that don't like to cook or maybe just don't know how to cook. Do you have any tips on how there are some healthy options for them to eat that don't require a great amount of prep or knowledge about cooking?
Sure. So again, keeping it simple, you can look to bring lunches to work or to your place of activity. But again, I brought these things today to kind of mention that these are very simple items that are easy to cook and easy to use.
Okay.
And so just giving your best shot, it all starts with just giving it a shot.
Okay. Sometimes, you talked about in our hurried up society, we want to go through a drive-thru and just grab food. A lot of times though, a fast food restaurant can actually be a socialization place for friends or family. Do you have any recommendations for people who actually do use a fast food restaurant for a socialization or a family type of gathering?
Absolutely. So we mentioned earlier that there are restaurants that are trying to serve healthier options. And a really smart choice you can make is just going to places that offer healthy foods and offer healthy foods. Okay. It could be a coffee shop or a grocery store cafe or somewhere that you have a healthy choice to lean towards.
Okay. And also, a lot of people know, that fast food isn't really good for them, but they think it tastes so good. I know I can sometimes just taste that hamburger. What would you say to those people who just feel the craving for the taste of a fast food hamburger?
Right, so a key word I mentioned earlier is, of course, moderation. Okay. Moderation in all things. So in this case, you recognize that sometimes it's an uphill battle to make fast food a healthy option, just because health food by virtue of itself isn't really very healthy. So what I might recommend is try to have fast food in moderation. Recognize that it's going to be a treat. Try to have it only once a week or even less if you're really good about it. Okay. And enjoy that treat when you have it, but keep it as a treat.
Okay. So moderation at best for those. Okay, so we've talked a lot about foods, but what about some of the drive-through beverage or drink places? Can you tell us if there's any dangers or any good, bad about some of those types of restaurants?
Sure. Well, the one that comes to mind is, of course, Starbucks and
Okay.
coffee shops. We live in a coffee shop era where really a Starbucks is not only but a block away at any given time. And so those drinks are kind of easy to reach for. And again, a simple mantra is just keep it simple. So
Okay.
coffee, of course, has no calories in it. Of course, adding cream and sugar will increase calories, but maybe trying to avoid the decadent drinks of frappes and mochas and frappuccinos that all have staggering amounts of calories. And if you do like those drinks, trying to maybe focus on choosing a lower calorie milk alternative or limiting the sweetener or things like that.
And in closing, I wanted to ask you, you work at Chaudere with children, I'm guessing. So can you just give us quickly a little bit about your thoughts on the nutrition and health side, especially important for children and their developing bodies?
Absolutely. So it's never too early to begin teaching kids about eating healthy. Of course, a healthy diet is the foundation of growing in a healthy way. All kids need calories, but of course you had to ask yourself, where do they get those calories from? Ideally, it's from lots of fruits, vegetables, whole foods. But in this day and age, it can be from a lot of places like processed foods and fast foods. So as best you can, a goal that I try to keep in mind for these young kiddos is trying to help them know what's good for their body and what maybe isn't so good.
Okay, great. Well, Tyler, you've given us some great advice and some good options, and we really appreciate all that you're doing to help us to eat healthy. So. And thanks again to Dr. Hecker for being with us today. We hope you've enjoyed today's show and learned about your choices for healthier eating. Until next time, stay fit, stay well, and stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org or call us at 406-443-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the YouTube icon. Special thanks to Fire Tower Coffee House and Roasters. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.